Today on the Lowdown, a Jameson podcast, Katie Jameson gives us the lowdown on life with their daughter Kenzie. Over to you, Hina and Mala.
Thanks, Jody. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LowDOWN podcast. On today's episode, we bring you this season's family spotlight, the Jameson family. Katie Jameson is a writer, speaker, storyteller, and disability rights activist. She is the mother of 4 children, 5-year-old Woodsy, 7-year-old twins Wally and Kenzie, and their firstborn son, Lachlan, who passed away when he was only 22 days old. After losing Lachlan, Katie began channeling her profound grief into her writing, creating an outspoken stance of advocacy that grew into the very language of love she needed when her daughter Kenzie was born with Down syndrome. Sharing a mixture of raw, heartbreaking stories and hilarious, joyful moments of motherhood, Katie has amassed a broad and loyal community of dedicated readers who support her calls for change. And we at the DSRF count ourselves amongst those. Welcome to the Lowdown, Katie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We're very excited to chat with you today. I think this is going to be a really wonderful opportunity for our listeners to learn more about you, about your family, and just about all the amazing things that you stand for. But in the grand tradition of the LowDOWN podcast, we like to start our episodes with 5 secret questions. Are you game for this?
Yeah.
I think you'll like these questions. Okay. Question number 1. What is your favorite family routine that you guys like to do together?
Oh, I love when the kids go to bed.
Yeah.
Oh, should I pick a better one than that?
No, I think that's very realistic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I love it.
Done.
Some peace. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Question number 2. What is an item on your bucket list?
Oh. Wow. Oh, Hannah, why are you doing this to me? Okay. An item on my bucket list. I really want to go to Greece.
Ooh, yeah.
And I don't know anything about Greece. It just looks like it would feel amazing to be there.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I really want to go to Greece.
Yeah. Like so beautiful, sun shining all the time. I mean, really
Good food.
good
Right?
food. Yeah.
Oh, it just sounds so good.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put it out there in the universe. Hope it will happen one day.
Okay.
Okay. Question number 3. What is your go-to karaoke song?
Okay. This is tricky.
It's a hard one.
It's a hard one. I would probably say because of Kenzie, I only know lyrics by heart to the following artists: Pink, Taylor Swift, Backstreet Boys, and the Encanto soundtrack.
Oh, she's got good taste.
Yeah, that's great taste. Yeah.
So anything by them.
That is a very big catalog. So yeah, I love that idea. Yeah. And it's like so many different genres. You're hitting Disney there. So that's great.
Yeah.
Lots
I
of
think
great
it's like a crowd pleaser for anybody.
Yeah.
90s throwbacks.
Exactly. Oh, well, people that listen to our podcast know how much of a 90s lover I am. So I am on board with all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 4. If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Oh my God.
You're an expert in a lot of things already, but another thing I wanted to add on to that.
Instantly become an expert in something. Okay, what a weird knee-jerk reaction. My head was like kung fu.
Oh, great. Nice. Why not? That's awesome.
I don't know. That's where I was like, that would be rad.
That is so cool. I love that idea.
All right. Well, there we go.
Kung Fu. Great.
These are hilarious questions.
Okay. We have one more. This is a really important question. Can be often controversial. Katie, what is your favorite dessert?
Oh, come on. It's chocolate cake. It's just like hands down
straight up
chocolate cake. Every time. There's no like meandering to the sides of that. It's just chocolate cake.
Classic. I love it. Love it. Great. Well, there you go. Now our audience gets to know you a little bit better. And I feel like you're going to get invitations to join Kung Fu classes now. So I'm excited to see how that works out.
Yeah, people can just like envision me eating chocolate cake after my kids go to bed.
Exactly. Well, listening to Pink, Yeah. And your kids are asleep. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing that with us. It was a fun little way to get things going. So can you start by telling us a little bit about your family's story? I know I did a little bit in the introduction, but we would just love to hear from your own words a little bit about your family.
Okay. I guess our family started with Lachlan, and he was born in 2014. And he was born with a really rare gene in his body. It's actually a story that I still have a hard time telling because I don't fully understand what was wrong with him was so complex and so hard to grasp onto that doctors didn't even know what was wrong with him until the day before we removed life support. So he was our sort of tumultuous little wonder that came into our lives and then left really quickly. And the grief that came after Lachlan was insurmountable. It felt like there wasn't going to be anything after that. And a year later, we found out we were pregnant with twins, which was wild because there are no twins in our family on either side. And halfway through that pregnancy, we found out that Kenzie would have Down syndrome. And that's probably a whole separate iPod or a podcast topic because the way that we were given her Down syndrome diagnosis was really heartbreaking. And it was really unique for me because I had just been through the loss of a child. And the way that it was phrased to me was that I was losing a child again. And I had such a unique perspective to why that was the wrong message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I still grapple with that today, really, the mechanics of how that was handed to us and the words that were chosen and the doctor who delivered it was the same doctor that diagnosed Lachlan. It was all just it was just a landslide of grief, it felt like, in those first 2 years of becoming a mother. And I really felt like I had the second half of my pregnancy stolen from me. I can admit now because I have perspective, but I went through the rest of my twin pregnancy thinking that I wasn't really pregnant with twins, that one of them wasn't quite like the other. And so it wasn't really the same experience that other parents were having. Only now can I look back at that and be like, I was right. I was not about to have any experience like any other parent was having. And like, how incredible was that?
Yeah.
And then I met Kenzie and I met Wally, and they were just these two like amazing little beings. And as soon as I met them, everything went away. Like all of my fear, everything just like evaporated. And it's tricky because I know that people are like, well, I wonder if I would have preferred knowing during pregnancy. Well, I wonder if I would have preferred finding out, when I met them.
Yeah.
And you can never have it the other way, right? You never get to have the other side of it. But I spent 20 weeks really being afraid of what was going to happen. And then within like 4 seconds of meeting Kenzie, it was all gone and everything just felt right. And so then we had our two little twins and they're super fun. And then my dad got really sick when the twins were about 3 months old. And we found out that he was diagnosed with neuroendocrine cancer. And he passed away 18 months later. It was a very aggressive and horrible time. And it just felt like grief was following me everywhere. It just felt like I couldn't get out from under it.
Yeah.
And 2 months after my dad passed away, we found out we were pregnant with Woodford. And that was a surprise and it was wonderful. And when Woodford was born, he opened up this sort of portal to healing and happiness. And it's not that the twins didn't bring that for me. It's just that with Kenzie's diagnosis and the sort of information I was being fed by society, my dad getting sick, it felt like I couldn't get out from underneath the weight of what Down syndrome had brought into our lives. And when Woodford came along, he was just this like bubbly little fat baby that was so happy. And he allowed me to start seeing the happiness that I had with Wally and Kenzie as well. He really was, I call him my little heart healer, because he really was. He really opened my eyes to how good everything was, even though we had just gone through such a horrendous season of grief. And since then, it's, you know, we've had some, you know, as every family does, we have ups, we have downs. We're carving our own path. That's something that I really find our family does. I really like set into the idea that we make our own way. And there's, I have found a deep comfort in that, actually, that I get to decide what life is and what life brings. And the more that society sort of like pushes against that, because we've had, again, another podcast, we've had some setbacks with what Kenzie is allowed to have and has access to. And I find the more that society pushes us up against that concept, the more I lean into the idea that we get to decide and we get to carve it out and we get to find the spaces for her.
It's on your own terms.
It's interesting you say that, because we've spoken with some other parents over the seasons of this podcast so far, and several of them have reflected that same idea, that when you can accept to some degree that your child is outside of this box of norms, it's very freeing, because that means there's no box for you. You can do whatever you want to be doing. It's scary, I think, but also freeing. And it's an interesting sort of thread among the families that we get to speak with.
Yeah, that's really true. When Kenzie received her autism diagnosis, I felt like all the pieces came together and we just like burst out of this structure that we had been trying to fit into. And it felt like freedom. It absolutely felt like we found this freedom for ourselves.
Since we brought up Kenzie, can you tell our listeners a little bit about Kenzie and what she's into these days? What is, just because I know her really well, but I would love for our listeners to get to know her a little bit as well.
Kenzie is such a fascinating, spunky little girl. She's 7. Wally and Kenzie are 7. They're in grade 2. They're in the same class at school together. And Kenzie is just like a texture lover. Like, this girl loves texture like nobody's business. We sort of have baskets in every room of our house that are just full. We don't throw anything away because we're like, oh, Kenzie would love that. It's just like texture in baskets around the house. And she chooses a different thing every day. She like imprints on something and decides that she loves it. She brings it to school with her. She brings it to her therapies. She's very outspoken in a nonverbal way. She is loud in her opinions and loud in what she wants to say. And she is nonverbal. And that has been a learning curve for me as her parent. It's been a learning curve for her brothers, for sure. And I think it's a learning curve for her extended family and the people around her to grasp the concept that Kenzie has a way she wants to do things, and she's going to let you know about it. And she's not going to let you know in a way that you're used to.
She has her own language.
She has her own language. And I find just like that fact, that one element about her so freeing and fascinating, like just to let go of language. I love that about her. It's one of my favorite things about her. She has bright blonde hair and a spunky little attitude. And she does have one word, and it's her favorite word, and it's no.
Perfect. Yeah, great.
And yeah, that's Kenzie. She's a blast.
She is. I'm lucky enough to get to see her in and around the clinic sometimes, and she is on the go. She has plans.
That girl has an agenda, and we will follow it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And I think that in itself is just so great because it forces us to think on Kenzie's terms too, right? Like so much time throughout the day, she is living on our terms. She's doing things on our terms. And so little of the day is on Kenzie's terms, especially when she's out of the home, right? So it's just like, so it's actually amazing to be like, okay, why don't you lead and let me see what you want to do and how you want to do it. And it's, you learn so much more about a person by just letting them dictate the terms sometimes, especially our loved ones with Down syndrome too, right? So yeah.
I find our best days are when we place zero. I mean, I learned this from Hannah. We place zero demands on anything, surrounding her. And we just have the best time. Like maybe it's like, you know what, Kenzie, we're going to go to the park, but we can get there however you want to get there. We can take as long as we want. We can do whatever you want to do when we get there. We can leave when you want to leave. We can take this direction instead of that. On those days when I follow what she wants to do, we have such a good time. It's so relaxed and carefree. And I always discover something that I wouldn't have discovered had we done it my way. And my way would have felt really hard, not only for her, but for me. It's really interesting, the letting go. It's so hard to do that. It's so hard to get to a point where you do the letting go. And I'm not saying it's always possible. Of course, there are structures we have to stick to, but the letting go feels so good. And she is teaching me that more than any of my other kids.
Can you talk a little bit about how Kenzie's own language and her own way to communicate has changed how you observe her and what you're looking for? Do you find that you're reading really subtle cues, or is she pretty upfront with you? I don't know her well enough to know that. Has it changed how you guys interact for you to be able to accept her communication?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest part of this is that we finally got an autism diagnosis. I don't want to like bang that drum too hard, but it's a part of her that we didn't have validation of until 6 months ago. And honestly, I can like timestamp that, receiving her diagnosis, to my absolute freedom of discovery of her. It was like I didn't have all of the pieces to her. I couldn't like hear the music that she was playing. Like the chords didn't make sense to me. And then all of a sudden we got this dual diagnosis, and like it was like harmony. Like I was just like, and that's who she is. And that's why she is this way. And that's how I discover her. And that's how I follow her. And it just made so much sense. And as soon as we received that diagnosis, I spent the summer sitting back and consciously accepting her ways of communication. I think I had always been accepting of her being nonverbal and like stimming and like all of those things I always loved about her. But I don't think I quite understood why she did them or what they meant in relation to like who she was and what she was saying.
Okay.
And I spent the last summer consciously stepping aside and not being the one that was in front of her making a path. I stepped aside and I followed along with her, and it led to countless days of discoveries of her talking to me in ways that I didn't hear before. Just ways that she would pick things up outside and she would feel them. All of a sudden I was noticing when she needed breaks, and I had never noticed before. And they are really subtle cues, Marla. They are small things that I think I was overlooking in the past. And it was just, since the summer, it's just been a really like beautiful uncovering of like her whole self. And her whole self is communicating in a nonverbal way and using textures to tell me what she wants and, you know, specific sounds mean specific things. And her body language says more than like my 5 sentences about something does.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's been having those two pieces together has really given me, and I think her whole family, and I think her team of teachers, and she's having an amazing year in grade 2. And I think that part of that is because we all have this other piece of her, and we all are understanding that there's this intrinsic way that she is moving through the world that we weren't noticing before, or we weren't giving space to before.
Yeah.
She's just broken out of these boxes, and she's painting with all of these colors that we weren't recognizing. And it's just like, she's made the tapestry visible for us now. And I think amazing. Like, I've just been able to sit back and finally like view it in full.
Oh, such a beautiful way to phrase it. And I mean, I can't imagine on her end how she feels being understood the way she wants to be understood, right? She understands my mom and my team and my people know why this texture is important to me. They're picking up on the cues, like that amount of freedom and gratification that she must feel knowing that I'm being understood. I think we undervalue that sometimes because we have lots of different ways of communicating with each other and various ways of understanding each other. But when it's something that's a little bit different and that is uniquely Kenzie, I can imagine how I must feel for her to be like, okay, you get
absolutely
me. Right.
Because you know, sometimes I'll cry when I think about this, about all of the times that she's been in a room and felt misunderstood. I mean, it's probably in her 7 years of life, it is thousands upon thousands of times that she has stood in a space and felt misunderstood by everybody that's around her. And we can see it. I mean, Hannah, you see, and I see, and Riley sees, and her teachers see, when she feels understood, when she feels like you know what she is asking for, she is this like bright light that just beams. And for us to give her access to that is just, I mean, that's freedom for her. And to think, oh my gosh, she's having such a good year in grade 2. Well, the result of that is that we're listening on her terms. We're paying attention to her. We're not asking her to pay attention to what we're putting demands on, right?
Yeah.
And just that simple, like it's so simple, but the outcome is massive. For me to be like, she's having a great year in grade 2. Not a lot of parents get to say that. Not a lot of parents get to say, my kid's having a great year this year. But I'm saying that because we're finally learning on her terms. We're doing it on her terms.
And I imagine that it extends past Kenzie to the rest of the family too. Everybody can have a lower stress and a lower level of worry around, you know, it's when somebody's misunderstood sort of categorically, like maybe she has been, everybody knows about it because that person is not happy, right? They're struggling, and consequently the people who love them struggle too. And now if she's able to be understood because you've dialed into Kenzie's language and her way to communicate, do you feel like that bounces back to you and you're able to take a breath and kind of revel in the success of that back and forth communication that you're having?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why there's been so much space for me to have these discoveries around her. For me, there's been so much space for me to get curious about her and kind of like uncover the wonder that is Kenzie, because I am not stressed out about what her behavior means and what it's doing and what the impact is for the boys. I'm able to have space for conversations with the boys around why Kenzie might be doing something the way that she's doing it. And also because I'm in a space where I am truly listening to Kenzie and what she's offering me. We're in a place where I'm feeling so more at ease with my own parenting. I'm feeling like I'm not doing something wrong. And I really did feel for a long time, for many years with Kenzie, because I didn't know. I mean, I knew in my heart that Kenzie most likely had autism, but I didn't know for a long time. And I kept getting told that she didn't, and we kept getting denied that assessment. I thought I was doing something wrong because Kenzie wasn't moving in a way that other kids with Down syndrome move. And she wasn't communicating in a way that other kids with Down syndrome do. She just wasn't like other kids with Down syndrome. And I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. And there's been an ease now, I think, with having that whole sort of painting of her.
Yeah.
That I'm so much more confident in how I'm parenting and how I'm supporting her, which, lands softly for her too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wanted to just quickly backtrack for a second and ask, when Kenzie was born and you were kind of getting, used to having a little one with Down syndrome, like how did the rest of the family react? Like, what was your support system like with other family members?
I think because we found out that Kenzie would have Down syndrome in my pregnancy, us and our family had the rest of my pregnancy to come to terms with it. So when everybody met Kenzie, everybody was just overjoyed. Everybody was just like, this little child is going to like change everybody. She's going to just be this little door that opens us all up to better things. And I think that maybe if it had been a birth, I don't know if it had been a birth diagnosis. I don't know if our family would have needed time to adjust mindsets while in front of her. I think I'm grateful that no one needed the time directly in front of her to adjust how they felt about somebody with a disability coming into the family. But our support system was really good. We had a really positive experience with our family. And I will say, as Kenzie gets older, it's tricky because, loving and supporting a baby, that's pretty easy. Babies are cute. All babies are cute.
Yeah.
All babies just need to get held and nap and be fed.
Yeah.
It's the experience as Kenzie grows that will be the most meaningful. And I do find that our family has a hard time engaging with her sometimes, if I'm putting all my cards on the table and I'm being honest. I do wish that Kenzie had closer relations with her extended family. At the same time, I can also understand that Kenzie is a person that I live with every day and I know her really well. And I know what it takes to make life with Kenzie meaningful and have that relationship be reciprocal. And what Kenzie and I have is, there isn't a word to describe what Kenzie and I have. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I do wish that everybody in our family could have that with her. And it requires work. It requires people to constantly adjust their mindset. To constantly be asking questions, to constantly be curious. And not everybody can commit to that. Not everybody can do it. So while everybody in our family loves Kenzie and everybody supports us and everybody wants the best for us, the best relationships that Kenzie will have are going to be with people that continue to meet her where she's at and get curious about who she is.
Yeah. Wonderful. You refer to yourself as like a nonverbal or non-speaking Down syndrome and autism advocate. What have you learned in the areas of, AAC and overall autism advocacy that you would like for others to know? Because it is, it can be a struggle for some families to come to terms with it, to embrace it. And you're such a wonderful example of embracing it and accepting it in all of its forms. So I would love to just kind of hear your thoughts on, was that easy? Was that hard? And what you would like others to know about that?
I don't know. I feel like it was easy and hard all at once, which is such a silly response. When I was really pushing for Kenzie to get an autism assessment, because I knew that she had autism and I couldn't make anyone believe me. My husband sort of was like, well, like, why are we pushing? Like, why are we pushing for this? Like she is who she is. And like, he didn't see it. And he wasn't sure. And I could feel him kind of pushing against adding another diagnosis into the mix.
Yeah.
And I understand that, because there are families out there who are like, we do not even have our minds wrapped around Down syndrome yet.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even have my mind wrapped around all of the support that it'll take. Like, and I understand that. And I said to my husband, her getting a dual diagnosis will change nothing about her.
Yeah.
She will continue to be Kenzie. She will continue to be the exact same person. She will still stim. She will still want to twirl. She's still going to laugh when you wrestle with her. She's still going to do all these. She's going to touch everything outside. She's going to pick up toys and not use them as toys. She's going to do all of these things that she's already doing. And we will have support.
Yeah.
And we will have a door open to us. And we will have people who understand her join our team.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, for me, it was sort of plain and simple, because as everybody who's listening to this knows, with a Down syndrome diagnosis, you do not receive access to support. You don't receive access, I should say, to funding for support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was so simple, because I knew that Kenzie needed more from us. I knew that Kenzie needed me to understand her better, and I didn't know how to get there. I knew that Kenzie needed people who spoke a different language than perhaps the Down syndrome community spoke, and I didn't know how to get her access to that. And I think that for her being nonverbal, there were many, many years where I wanted her to talk so much. I wanted her to say mama. I think around age 2 and 3, probably even 4, I really wanted that girl to talk. I wanted it to be easy for her. I wanted life to be easier for her. I wanted her to walk into spaces and have people understand her. And that was my own thing that I had to get around. I had to really dig deep and figure out what that bias was, and figure out why I thought that was so important. And it's not that I was wrong, because Kenzie will walk into many spaces where people will not understand her, and it will be hard. I can't remove that for her, because I can't remove that barrier from society for her.
Yeah.
But what I did was I removed my own bias to it, and why I thought that was a better way to live than being nonverbal. Mm-hmm. And I am now leaning into the magic of what it is to communicate outside the bounds of language, because it is magical. And the discoveries that I make, and I share them on social media, and some of the kindest messages I ever get are people being like, I love these 30-second clips that you share of Kenzie, not saying a word, but saying so many things.
Much. Yeah.
People are like, oh, the way that she talks with her hands is just so soothing. I find it so calming. Yeah. And I'm the exact same way. I have found so much calming space with Kenzie, because we have a relationship that doesn't use language to communicate, or doesn't use verbal language to communicate.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard thing to get around. I did have to dig that bias out myself. But I will say to anybody that's listening, that's not sure how they feel about it, I am now on the other side of what that looks like. And it's so much better. It's so much better over here, where I'm in full acceptance and love and admiration for the way that Kenzie moves through life. And yes, there are barriers in society that are going to push up against that. But for Kenzie to grow up in a family that is unencumbered in their acceptance and love for who she is and how she moves. Yeah. I mean, that's what we want for any of our kids, right? That's how we want all of our kids to grow up.
I want to talk about a few themes in what you were describing. The first thing that comes to mind is that sort of instinct or urge to want your child to talk, I think, is natural, and it has a lot to do with what we anticipate parenthood is going to be like. But it's also a protection thing, because a child who's understood well and easily, has an easier time. And so it's a protection for the parent themselves to be like, I want it a little bit easier for myself, but I really want doors open for my child. I want this to be easy for them. Nobody is asking for their child's life to be hard. That's a very natural thing. And then for Kenzie and the family to be open to all the ways that she does communicate is huge. And I'm really curious about how you've been able to talk to her school. It sounds like she's having a great year, and introduce them to Kenzie's form of communicating and how it's affected them and their ability to work successfully with her, and so that everybody's having a good time. Has that been have you shared videos? How has that worked for you?
Yeah, so this year going into grade 2, so grade 1 wasn't great. Grade 1 didn't go well for us. And it didn't go well for Wally either, to be honest. Grade 1, I learned after the fact, is really hard for kids. And and as a result, it's hard for parents. Both Wally and Kenzie really struggled in grade 1. And at the end of the year, I went in and talked to the class about Down syndrome. And I had chosen not to talk to her peers in kindergarten about Down syndrome, because I didn't want to give the kids a reason to name the thing that made Kenzie different from them. That was sort of my approach. I was like, I don't want the kids to have the language to say that Kenzie is different because of this. I wanted them to just get to know Kenzie and love her and discover her differences sort of as they went. Grade 1, I kind of went into the same approach. I didn't want to. I talked to teachers about, Kenzie's support needs, but I didn't go and talk to any of the kids in the classroom about, why she moved. I said that she needed things. She needs sign, and she needs you to come and approach her and ask her to play. But I didn't give them any language around why that might be. At the end of grade 1, I went in and I decided to tell them about Down syndrome. And I went in and I did like an hour of like coloring worksheets, and we read a story about Down syndrome. We read a story about an elephant using an AAC device. And I talked about Eddie the Elephant. It's so good. And we talked about Down syndrome. And then at the end, I asked them if they knew anybody with Down syndrome. And none of them knew. And it was such a revelation for me. I was like, they need to know. They need the words to understand that Kenzie is different and deserves all of your love and friendship and admiration and support, both of those things. And after that conversation with the kids, and I said, guess what? Kenzie has Down syndrome. Your friend sitting right here, this little person has Down syndrome. And that's what we talked about today. Their eyes were like huge. Like they were just like, what? Oh, wow. Kenzie has, like, it was just like a revelation to them. And it was such a lesson to me in offering the language that people need to learn and understand and get curious about how a person moves, who a person is. It was so important, and it was so integral to the like part of their acceptance of who she was. So in grade 2, I went in and I gave them all the stuff. I went over and above. I gave the teachers and the EAs a binder of information about Down syndrome. This is what autism is. This is what nonverbal means. I talked about stimming. I talked about her AAC device. I went into the class. I read the same book again. And I said, remember how Kenzie needs to use an AAC, and this is what it is. And this is why it's hers. And this is why, you only touch it if she invites you to touch it. And I went in and I handed the information to the classroom so that the classroom could support Kenzie with all of the information that they needed to do so. I didn't leave anything out. And I think also that this whole concept of me, getting this dual diagnosis and getting this other piece of her, I knew, I was like, I didn't have access to this information, and I was missing this massive gap of who she was and why, all these parts of her are so important. And so I knew that going in and handing it to the classroom was empowering the classroom to support and love her.
Well, you just made me cry.
Yeah.
And your shirt says, I'm just going to tell everybody listening, your shirt says advocate like a mother. And that is what that is.
Yeah.
I feel like I should applaud you right now.
I know.
No.
That's just incredible. Incredible. You set it up. You set it up perfectly.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, that was a learning curve, right? Because there's going to be people listening to this that are thinking the way that I thought in kindergarten. They're going to be like, I don't want kids to
it's
have a reason
understandable.
to think she's different. Yeah. And there are families that are on the other side where I am now. They're like, I want everyone to have all the information.
Yeah.
And I can say in our experience, handing people all the information has been the key to Kenzie's success.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's that little different, or that little thing that says, different. If we just say someone's different and, people can see that people with Down syndrome are different, they don't know what and why and whatever, then it might be scary. But if we go through the process of, naming the things and explaining it, then it can't be scary because we know what it is.
Yeah.
It's actually not that different.
Yeah.
And just
Incredible.
understanding that different can be a good thing, right? It doesn't have to be something that you have to be scared for. It's something that should be celebrated.
Yeah.
So,
A lot of my writing these days, whenever I'm writing about Kenzie and our experience and my experience as her parent, and what I observe as she sort of moves through her days, my advocating has really it's shifted a lot. I used to really like bang the drum and I was like, my child is worthy. My child is like, deserving of all these things. And she is. That piece hasn't changed. But I've gotten softer and quieter on that aspect of it. And I've gotten louder in the area of life with Kenzie is so good. Like it's so good. And I think, I'm going to cry.
oh, that's okay. We're right along with you.
I'm already crying.
I'm already crying too. So it's okay.
But I think my advocating is changing because the first thing that people need to know is that life with Kenzie is good. It's so good. And everything else comes after. I don't need to shout that she's worthy because I don't need to add an addendum to Down syndrome. I don't need to be like, she has Down syndrome and she's worthy. Nope. Kenzie is good. And everything that comes along with her is good.
Yeah.
And it's just been like such a freeing.
Yeah.
It's been so freeing for me and for her family to wrap our heads around the idea that advocating doesn't need to be, banging the drum and saying like, oh, my child can do it. My child can do it. Look at this. Like, look where we're at. No one thought we would get here, but here we are. We reached this milestone.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that. It can just be showing up every day and being like, this kid is amazing.
Yeah.
And look, she didn't reach a milestone today and she's still amazing. No, she's not counting to 5. Holy shit, this kid is so amazing.
Yeah.
The way she talks to me with a leaf in her hand is like the most beautiful thing. No, we didn't break any boundaries today, but oh my God, this kid is amazing. Like life with her is good.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I want my advocacy to sit now, and just like the understanding that no matter what you get, no matter who your kid is, what they're capable of, what they accomplish, what they do, what they don't do.
Yeah.
Life with them is so good.
Yeah. Oh.
Let's pause for weeping for a moment.
Like everyone just, I honestly, yeah. It really does come down to that though, Katie. It really does come down to that. And I think it's such a powerful thing that you said, that despite accomplishments or those things don't matter at the end of the day. It's the person is good. And I think, it's very beautifully said. Yeah. And I think you're going to help a lot of families when they listen to this. You're going to help free them as well. So it's pretty powerful.
So.
Yeah.
I hope so. I want someone to feel, I don't know how to describe it other than like, I've said it like 18 times this podcast already, but like it's freedom.
Yeah.
It is like a recipe for freedom. It is medicine to just let go and like sink into how good things are.
I'm just really happy for you. I think that's what it is. I'm just like overwhelmingly happy that you are in it and you see it and you have this joy. I'm just so happy.
Thank you.
Okay. Here we go. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit because I would love to talk about Kenzie all day, but you do more things too. And so I want to talk about those things here for a bit. I would like to start with your inclusive soccer program. Some of my other students are in this program too. And I would love if you could tell us a bit about it and why you are doing it and why you chose this project.
Amazing. This is probably, myself and another parent, Arlie Crothers, we started an adaptive soccer team in our community in South Vancouver, BC. And this has truly become like the best thing I have ever done. Like, it's crazy. I will stand on the sidelines and just weep. And I will just weep with the realization that these kids did not have access to the thing that they are doing before we
made it happen. Yeah.
And that's really what, like, you know, I feel like that's the true essence of activism, right? Is going out and making the thing that you see not existing, you know? Yep. So I tried to sign Kenzie up for soccer last year, and we weren't able to find anything that could include her within our community. And that was a big piece for me within our community. There wasn't something. I could have driven to Langley. I could have driven to Port Coquitlam. I could have put my kid in the car for an hour to go and play a team sport and then driven an hour back. But she didn't have any access to anything within her community. So her peers and the people that live around us weren't seeing her do any kind of active sport. And that was a big no-no for me. I got really upset. And when I get upset, I decide to do stuff. So me and this other mom talked on the phone one day, and she was also unhappy. Her daughter also has a disability and she couldn't find a team sport. We had never met before. She had seen me post something on social media about Kenzie not having access to soccer. And we thought, well, how hard can this be? Like, let's just do it. Let's just make something. And if 5 kids show up, you know, that'll be great. And then we started thinking, you know, we don't know how to like gain access to a field. There was like so many things that we didn't know. So we approached a soccer club with the full belief that they would say, no, thank you, because that's something that you're very used to hearing in the disability community. And we approached Marpole Soccer Club. And the first thing they said was, oh, we don't have that, but can you tell us how to make it?
Oh,
it was like,
I feel like that never happens, but yay.
We were floored. Me and this other mom were like speechless in this Zoom call with the registrar. She and this woman who we now work with, her name's Courtney. She was like, I don't know anything about adaptive. Can you tell me about it and how we would make this? How much time do we need? We have 2 weeks till the season starts. Is that enough time? Oh. And we couldn't believe, we were like, oh my God, you want to do this year? And she was like, yeah, let's make this happen in 2 weeks. So I put out information on social media. We worked with Marpole. They gave us jerseys. They paid for the field. We made the program free because Arlie and I said the only thing that we know we really need is for this program to be free, because families of kids with disabilities pay for too much stuff, and we're not having anybody pay for this. And we got volunteers from the community showed up. We had 35 kids show up on the first day. It was with no advertising, just like, to me, that's like a huge wake up call. That's 35 kids in one community that were not playing a team sport before that happened. They did not have access to the feeling of what it felt like to run across a field with peers who moved the way that they moved, and be supported by people who weren't telling them they couldn't do something, they had to do it a different way. Yeah. It was so incredible. We had 8 weeks of that program. We had coaches. I was one of the coaches. So we used volunteers as coaches, and we sort of, we made it the best that we could make it. And we supported these kids, and it was amazing. And then we decided to move it indoors for fall. And in October, we rented a gym. We hired coaches. We hired support staff who worked with our volunteers, because one of the biggest feedback was that our volunteers loved what they were doing, but they didn't know how to do what we were asking them to do. And we have been taking feedback sort of since the beginning, knowing that we don't really know what we're doing, and we're just sort of doing the best that we can. And we hired these 2 support workers, who one is a disability justice activist who helps companies do better disability inclusion within their companies. And the other was an EA from a high school in South Vancouver, who is just like the most amazing woman and supports kids with disabilities all day long, and then comes to our program and supports our volunteers. And we had 50 kids show up on the first day. And it was unbelievable. It was overwhelming, to be honest. Arlie and I just could not believe that there was this many kids that not only needed the access to this, but like wanted to participate. And they were just waiting for something like this to show up. Mm-hmm. And it's just been, I don't know, it started as something that I wanted for Kenzie. And Kenzie likes soccer. Sure, Kenzie likes soccer, and she's doing great, and she thinks it's wonderful. Is Kenzie going to play soccer for the rest of her life? Probably not. It's like, not her top 10 things to do. But like, will I keep doing this program? 100%. Like this, it's just turned into the most like cup filling thing that I have done in a really long time. And we have families every week that are just like, thank you. Thank you for access to this thing that my child gets to see, that he deserves to have this space.
Yeah.
That there are kids who move just like him, and it's good that he doesn't have to kick a ball to play soccer. He can just show up in the room and be there, and that is soccer. It's just been so eye-opening for me. And working with Arlie has really sort of helped me understand the justice side of disability and what needs to happen in order for a space to be truly inclusive and for something to be built from the ground up with disabilities in mind. It's been like a steep learning curve, and I have a child with a disability. It's a lot of information, but it's been so good. And I gave a talk a few weeks ago to a group of preschool teachers. And one of their questions was, if you walked into our space and like, it wasn't as, we're trying, like, we want to be inclusive. That's the thing, right? They're like, we want to be inclusive. But like, if you walked into our space, like, what's the thing that you would say that we needed to change the most in order for your daughter to participate? And I was like, I would just say that you need to do the changes and make the changes before I show up.
Yeah.
I can't have Kenzie play catch up because that's how she's not included. Mm-hmm. Like if the space isn't already under construction to be inclusive, then a family like mine doesn't know to come and look for it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we learned, that we can't wait for 50 families to be like, me, like, I'll come. We just had to make it and like see who walked through the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the greatest things about the soccer program. You mentioned it earlier, that it is truly an inclusive program because you can play soccer however you want to play soccer. There are no terms that define how you enjoy it. I've seen Kenzie through some of your videos on how she plays soccer, and she does it differently than another person and then another person, but they are all still part of the same group. And that is what true inclusion is. Yeah,
exactly. They are all participating in whatever way is meaningful for them. And it's meaningful because we've created a space that makes it meaningful for them.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
I want to touch a little bit too on another group that you're really active in, and that people, you're busy, but your shirt says it all. So here we are. let's talk about Down Syndrome BC. This is an important group to know about if you live in this province, and it's an important concept to look for if you don't. So let's hear about that.
Well, Down Syndrome BC started as a passion project as well. I think that's how a lot of things start these days. And it was a group of parents that came together after like one too many times of being told that our kids couldn't have access to something or weren't able to receive that support or wasn't able to happen in the classroom. And we came together. It's a grassroots BC based charity that advocates for better access to healthcare, education, adult living for individuals with Down syndrome in BC. We are advocacy based. So that's what makes us a little different. We're allowed to say things that other organizations might not be able to say because we are a parent-run, advocacy-led organization. We do a lot of letter writing. We engage with the community a lot. We ask a lot of questions. We've made 2 different surveys. The first one was access to support, and the second one was on receiving a diagnosis, because we know that without data, we can't ask for changes. And so it's a slow burn for sure. I joined being like, I want change now. And we're 3 years in, and our vice president, Rebecca Rubenstein, is the like calm force that steers our ship forward. I am a very passionately driven person, as is our president, our volunteer president, Tamara Taggart. She and I like to really stand up and say things quite loudly, maybe a few swear words involved. And Rebecca is the yin to our yang, and she just like calmly steers us forward. And it's been really good. It's been really positive to have an outlet, to feel like I am pushing for a difference in a way that I don't get to as a parent.
Yeah.
And I think like it's tough because so much of what we're doing is behind the scenes. And I would love to like shout all of the ways that we're trying to like make a difference. But I think the common thread to Down Syndrome BC is that we are very like quietly and forcefully moving forward, and we will be and are demanding change, I think.
Yeah. And we need that.
And we need that,
we really need that. And we need both parts of your leadership team too, right? We need people to make those discrepancies obvious, because not everybody knows, not everybody's in the community, and they don't think about it. So we need people to point those things out. And then we also need people who stay the course and make sure that, you're working towards some change that can, speak the same language as government, some of those kinds of things.
Absolutely. That's what, and that's exactly what the makeup is. And it is a very well-oiled machine at this point. And I am really proud of all of the things that we have done and we are doing in the future.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also just important for people to appreciate that this is like all of the people that are involved with the organization, if I'm not mistaken, are parents of kids with Down syndrome, various levels of complexities and lots of stuff going on. And yet you've chosen to now advocate on behalf of all the families in BC. So it's a big undertaking. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work, but it is.
It's so much work. It's so much work. But I also learned that making an inclusive sports team is so much work. Yeah. There's no shortcut to inclusion. There is no shortcut to games. And I think a lot of the times inclusion and changes and gains don't happen because people find out, oh my gosh, like this is really difficult. Government finds out how hard it is. Organizations find out how hard it is. And it doesn't happen. It's a slow burn. It really is a slow burn.
Mm-hmm. I also want to put out there that the things that you advocate for in Down Syndrome BC, Down syndrome is what I like to call a little big group. So it's about 1 in 700 kids. that's not a lot, but it's more than some other groups that are really, really tiny. And you're rowing the boat for them too, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have that sort of group power that we have in our Down syndrome community. So the things that you work for and accomplish in that organization benefit a huge number of mini groups that also need that help too.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest learning curves that I've had in the last year or two is that advocating for all disabilities will get change for Kenzie's disability.
Correct. Yeah.
So for Down Syndrome BC, we really, when we do our action call outs, like, yes, we are advocating really hard right now for individualized funding for children with Down syndrome, but our language is always individual funding for every child with a disability in the province. That's what it needs to be. It has to be all inclusive.
Yeah.
And then again, when we made this soccer team, it really was anybody welcome. And Arlie and I were very clear that we did not need kids to have a diagnosis in order to participate. Because so many families don't have access to getting a diagnosis.
Yeah.
And they still need support.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. You've been really honest and upfront about some of the challenges that you have experienced as a parent. And we know that that's a universal for parenthood, and particularly it can be more acute, we can say, for families who have a child with Down syndrome. And is there anything that you want other parents to know? I know a lot of parents feel guilty that, they're not quote unquote doing enough. What would you say to them?
Any parent who has a child with a disability is doing enough. There is no bar to set ourselves to. I hope I don't come off as a parent that's doing it all, because there are bad days. There are days with zero success. There are days that I don't follow through with any of the things I just said in the last hour. I think what I have learned most in the last 6 months with Kenzie is that just showing up beside her, not in front of her, not like pushing from behind, but just like showing up beside her every day and allowing her the space to advocate for herself, which she does differently from any other child. Kenzie won't do it the same way that, the family who has a child with Down syndrome next to us will do it. But just showing up every day and giving her the space to be herself and be herself within a group of peers, be herself in front of her teacher, be herself with her therapist, be herself at the grocery store. Just me letting her show up exactly how she is me advocating for the world to accept her exactly how she is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's end with Kenzie. And when you picture Kenzie's future, what do you hope that looks like for her?
I hope that Kenzie feels loved her whole life, the same way that I hope my boys feel loved their whole life. I hope that Kenzie feels understood. And I hope that Kenzie lives a life where she feels like she's given this space to authentically be herself. I hope that Kenzie has a future where the world expects disability. They don't just put up with it or make accommodations for it. I hope that Kenzie's future involves working with people who were waiting for her to get there, who were just standing around saying, well, we can't wait till she chooses us. Like, we can't wait because we have everything ready. We have everything that she needs, and we just need her to choose us. That's what I hope Kenzie's future is. I don't know if that's what it'll be, but that's what I hope it is.
I feel like that's what I think you're working towards making it like that for Kenzie and for so many other kids. So That's beautiful. Now you're going to make us cry again.
I hope you guys have a tissue disclaimer on this one.
We
We
probably
will put
should.
one, just a little Kleenex box.
Just like, please listen with a roll of toilet paper.
Toilet paper.
Don't get fancy, just a roll of toilet paper will do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if not, sleeves will work just as well.
Sleeves are good.
Long sleeves are good. Yeah.
Well, Katie, it has been absolutely our pleasure to have a bit of your time today, and what a joy to talk with you. And I can just imagine people now who are listening and feel the same way. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I adore talking about my daughter.
Yes. She is pretty special, that girl. So yeah, I can co-sign on that one for sure.
Yeah, she's
pretty awesome.
Man, she's a cool girl. She's a cool girl.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Katie. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.